Hello, my name is Simri. I was 8 months pregnant when I collapsed in my mother's kitchen, right there, next to the mousse I had been making for her party. They didn't rush to help. They didn't even pause. They stepped over me, for dessert. And later, they laughed about it, called me dramatic. Queen D, they said. But the worst part? It wasn't the fall. It was realizing. They'd been stepping over me my whole life. So how do you survive a family that smiles while it erases you? Let me tell you what happened next. I didn't feel the swelling in my ankles until I bent to pick up the last tray of deviled eggs. 8 months into this pregnancy, and my body had started giving me subtle warnings. Small things like tightening around my ribs when I stood too long, or the dull ache at the base of my spine that turned sharp by sundown. But today, those small things had come together like an orchestra warming up before a storm. The kitchen smelled like paprika, boiled eggs, butter, and vinegar. My mother's house hadn't changed much since I was a kid. White siding, ivy crawling up the porch posts, ceramic angels perched on shelves like they had something better to do. The formal dining room had been set hours ago, cloth napkins, inherited silver, crystal glasses filled with nothing but filtered water and expectation. I stood there, one hand pressed to my lower back, the other holding a frosting bag, dotting the last of the cupcakes with blue rosettes. No one had asked me to make them. I just knew if I didn't, someone, probably Isolde, would make a scene about the dessert table looking unbalanced. Isolde was already stretched out on the living room couch, scrolling through her phone like she'd clocked out of life years ago. She sipped her sweet tea, the way she did everything, slow, smug, and with perfectly manicured fingers. Mom was somewhere between her bedroom and the foyer, prepping herself like the party was for her coronation. And maybe it was. After all, a Southern woman doesn't host a birthday party without transforming the house into a Pinterest board come to life. "You're lucky," Isolde called from the couch. "Being pregnant means you don't have to do the heavy lifting." Lucky. That word stung more than I let on. My doctor had pulled me aside at the last appointment. Her brows creased the way they do when she doesn't want to scare you but needs you to hear her. "We need to keep an eye on your blood pressure, Simri," she said. "Any signs of dizziness or swelling, let us know immediately. It's not uncommon in the third trimester, but it can turn quickly." I told Mom. Her response? "In my day, we gave birth standing in potato fields. You'll be fine." I didn't push. What was the point? Anytime I raised a concern, it got rerouted to someone else's crisis. Usually Isolde's. Or worse, Avon's. And God forbid I make anything about me. "You did remember the mousse, right?" Isolde's voice cut across the room like a blade hidden in silk. "Don't make this about you again." My hand paused mid-frost. My fingers tensed around the piping bag. I didn't even turn. I just felt the air shift. For a moment, it was like everyone in the room inhaled the same breath. Then, back to smiles, movement, harmless chatter. I didn't respond. I just went back to frosting. Quietly. The knife clanked against the cutting board louder than I intended when I turned to slice cucumbers for the sandwiches. My legs trembled slightly, not enough to collapse, but enough to make me second-guess every motion. The hum in my ears grew louder with each step I took. Then Avon strolled in like he was the guest of honor, smelling like body spray and carelessness. He carried nothing but his phone and that same half-smile that always got him out of trouble. "Good to see you, little sis," he grinned. "House looks great." Mom trailed in behind him, already beaming. "He always brings good energy, doesn't he?" I didn't answer. I had mustard on my palms and silence in my throat. The mousse still wasn't done. My legs screamed for a break, so I leaned back onto the nearest bar stool. It wasn't even a full sit, just a rest. A second to breathe. "You have 10 minutes, Simri," Mom said, appearing like she had been rehearsing the line. "Pull it together. Guests will be here soon." I opened my mouth, maybe to protest, maybe to explain, but she was already gone. Her perfume lingered in her absence, light and sharp, like everything else she left behind. So I stood back up. I always stood back up. I returned to the mousse, lifting the whisk, ignoring the ache in my wrists. I knew I should drink something, but the fridge door felt miles away. I grabbed a spoon instead. That's when the floor shifted. It wasn't a dramatic fall. Just a moment, an edge, where balance betrayed me. My breath caught mid-chest. My vision narrowed like someone had dimmed the lights. I blinked, trying to focus on the bowl in front of me, but the blue tiles below looked oddly inviting, like they were coming up to meet me. I grabbed the counter. It wasn't enough. My knees buckled first, then my hands lost grip, and for a brief second, I saw the cupcakes I'd frosted earlier, each one perfect, untouched, too pretty to eat. Then everything blurred. I didn't hear anyone shout. I didn't feel anyone rush over, just silence. And the floor. If they wanted me to stay invisible, they were about to regret underestimating me. I felt the cold first. Not the kind that made you shiver, but the numbing type that spread from your limbs inward, like your body was drawing back into itself. I was curled on the tile, one arm wrapped tightly over my stomach, the other barely supporting my weight. My cheek was pressed against the linoleum, sticky with something I hadn't registered yet. From the living room, the music played on. Frank Sinatra, something about love and second chances. It floated through the air like nothing had happened. Footsteps approached, not in a rush, just the lazy, thudding rhythm of someone who had all the time in the world. Did she drop something again? Isolde's voice, coated in syrupy disdain, drifted in. I wanted to respond. I wanted to say, no, I dropped, but the words never made it past my tongue. Then I saw them. White sneakers stepping around me, not stopping. Avon. He paused long enough to glance down, eyebrows barely lifting, then veered right, to grab a soda from the fridge. He didn't speak. Not to me, not about me. The refrigerator door slammed shut. He turned and walked away, sipping casually, like stepping over his pregnant sister sprawled out on the floor was just another Tuesday inconvenience. My fingers twitched. I tried to push myself up, but the room tilted. I lowered my head again, praying silently that the pounding in my chest wasn't what I feared. The soft click of kitten heels approached next. Vera May? Her perfume announced her before her presence did. Rose water and denial. She didn't kneel, didn't gasp. She just stood there. "Why are you lying down, baby girl?" she asked, like I was a 5-year-old playing make-believe. "The mousse isn't finished." I blinked slowly. "I'm dizzy. I need water." She exhaled through her nose and shook her head. "Every party, something's gotta be about you." That was it. No touch, no helping hand. Just a sigh, a judgment, and a dismissal. I could have laughed if it hadn't felt like my ribs were made of glass. This wasn't new. This was expected. I was back in middle school. Assembly day, flu symptoms raging, palms clammy, vision spotting. I'd told her I didn't feel right that morning. She'd pressed a church bulletin into my hand and said, "You'll be fine, sweetie. Smile pretty." I fainted before the third student finished reading the Pledge of Allegiance, right there, on the auditorium floor. Woke up with the principal and school nurse hovering. Later that evening, she didn't ask if I was okay. She just said, "You embarrass the family. You don't faint. You fix your posture and push through." And that had been my job since push through. Pretend nothing was wrong. Perform. Back in the present, the doorbell rang. A cheer went up from the other room. Laughter spilled over the music as the first guests arrived. Their voices wrapped around the kitchen like vines, cheerful, unaware, uninterested. I could hear Isolde now, laughing with someone, probably about my antics. The one who always made things complicated. The one who just wanted attention. Avon cracked a joke about the moose being cursed. I lay there, forgotten. Then I watched it happen. Feet, shiny loafers, strappy heels, worn boots, stepped over me, not around, over. They murmured ohs and careful theirs to each other. But no one addressed me, no one said my name. They just moved toward the dessert table like I was a spilled drink someone else would clean up later. One woman even asked, "Is that part of the theme?" and laughed like it was clever. And I stayed still, not because I couldn't move, but because I needed to see. I needed to see if anyone would reach down. No one did. And in that strange, still moment, flat against the floor with mousse undone and a baby inside me kicking against my ribs, I saw the truth. If I passed out, if I passed away, No one in this house would stop the party. There would be excuses. She was dramatic. She was too sensitive. She was always looking for a way to ruin things. I'd heard them all before. Enough times that they stopped feeling like insults and started sounding like the family motto. My breathing slowed. I closed my eyes. Let them think I was weak. Let them say I collapsed again. Because this time, I wouldn't crawl back to prove them wrong. This time, I'd wait. Then I'd rise. Not for their approval, not for their comfort, but to end this. Finally. They didn't step in to help. They stepped over me. For Moose. And if that meant becoming the villain in their perfect little play, so be it. I didn't move right away. The floor beneath me had warmed just enough from my body to feel oddly familiar, like an old shame. It took a slow count of 5 before I pressed my palms into the tile and shifted my weight backward until I was sitting upright against the fridge, knees bent, arms slack. The mousse was still unfinished. My hands smelled like lemon zest and something sourer. The house beyond the kitchen had shifted into full-on celebration mode. Voices overlapped with the clinking of cutlery, bursts of laughter rising in waves. No one asked where I was. No one peeked into the kitchen. As far as they were concerned, I'd done my part. I sat there, letting my breathing even out. My fingers brushed over a small damp patch on my blouse near my waist, either from the mousse or from sweat. Maybe both. That was when I noticed it, taped to the fridge door with floral-patterned washi tape. The party invitation. Cream cardstock, gold-embossed edges, Vera. May loved anything that shimmered. I'd helped design the layout on Canva weeks ago, as a favor, but what I hadn't seen until now was the label below the list of names. Host, Vera May. Special guests, Isolde Avon. Helper, Simri. The handwriting wasn't typed, it was hers, Vera May's tight, proper cursive, black ink, like a signature. Helper, not host, not co-planner, not daughter. I blinked at it longer than I meant to. That single word had more weight than the tray of deviled eggs I'd carried in earlier. And it wasn't new. It was just proof. Proof that in her eyes, I wasn't part of the family's image. I was the labor behind it. The girl who made the mousse, not the woman carrying the next generation of this lineage. A breeze from the open window caught the edge of the invitation, making it flutter slightly. I didn't reach out to straighten it. Instead, I let myself remember. Age 9, spring break. That ridiculous ceramic vase, painted with bluebirds and fake gold trim, that Isolde had begged to redecorate with fake pearls and hot glue. We weren't supposed to be in the dining room, but she'd convinced me it would be fine. She knocked it over. It shattered into 9 pieces and 1 chip that rolled under the china cabinet. When Mom came home, Isolde cried. I stood silent. You know how sensitive your sister is, Mom had whispered sharply, her arm around Isolde's shoulder. Be the bigger girl. So I was. I said I bumped it. I apologized. And I got grounded for 3 days. That was the first time I learned what taking the fall meant. Not just metaphorically, but literally being the one they'd rather see down. Now here I was again, belly full of someone new, body bruised from too many compromises, and still I was the helper. I reached out, slowly peeled the invitation from the fridge, folded it in half, and slid it into my back pocket. The ache in my lower back reminded me I was still sore, still tender, but not broken. I stood. It wasn't graceful. My left foot had gone a little numb, and I had to hold onto the counter for balance. My hand brushed the frosting bowl. I didn't even glance at it. I walked out of the kitchen. The party was in full swing. The dining table gleamed. Candles flickered. Laughter echoed through the hall. Guests were holding little plastic cups of sweet tea, balancing plates of quiche and ham rolls. I moved through them like a ghost. Isolde saw me first. She raised an eyebrow, but said nothing. Her gaze slid from me to her friend beside her, and she leaned in to whisper something. Probably a joke. Probably about me. I passed Avon. He was in the middle of explaining something to a group of women about how hard it is to be emotionally intelligent as a guy nowadays. I didn't stop. I opened the front door, stepped out, and let it close behind me. The porch was quiet, cooler than inside. The cicadas had started singing, and the sun had begun to dip below the horizon, casting long amber shadows across the lawn. I sank into the wooden bench beside the hydrangea bush and exhaled for what felt like the first time that day. My phone buzzed in my pocket. A text from Darian. "How's it going?" I didn't answer immediately. Instead, I typed, "If something happens tonight, I need you to remember everything." I stared at the message. My thumb hovered over send. Then I hit backspace, deleted it. Not because it wasn't true, but because I didn't want my actions to be born from fear. I was choosing this, choosing to see, choosing to stop pretending this family was ever going to change if I kept playing the role they assigned me. Helper. I tucked the phone back into my pocket, folded my arms over my belly, and felt my daughter stir. One solid kick, like punctuation. "You hear that?" I whispered. "That's your cue." Because this wasn't just about me anymore. It never had been. I'd been invisible my whole life, but my daughter won't be. And if she still wouldn't listen, then maybe it was time someone else did. The morning after the party crawled in slow. I hadn't meant to stay the night, but after the fall, after the silence, after realizing that even being sprawled out on the kitchen floor didn't warrant concern, I knew I couldn't drive. Not even to Darian's. My body needed stillness, so I stayed. The room I'd grown up in hadn't changed. Same wallpaper with faded butterflies, same twin-sized bed with the floral comforter Mom insisted still looked new. I lay awake most of the night, shifting from side to side, unable to find a position that didn't remind me how heavy my body felt, how swollen my legs had become, how tight the skin stretched across my belly with each breath. No one knocked. No one peeked in. No one asked how I was doing. I could hear them downstairs, though. At some point after 8 a.m., the coffee maker gurgled, the morning news hummed from the living room, and Avon laughed loudly at something on his phone. Life had resumed. Mine had paused. When the sun finally crept far enough to warm the edge of the windowsill, I rolled to sit upright. My back twinged sharply, my hip cracked, and I breathed through the pain. After washing up in the cramped bathroom across the hall and changing into the same maternity jeans and shirt I'd worn the day before, I slowly made my way downstairs. The kitchen was spotless, counters wiped, dishes gone, not a single trace of the chaos from the party the night before. Vera May was folding cloth napkins at the end of the island, smoothing each one with exacting patience. She didn't look up as I entered. "Feel better now?" she said, tone light, but her voice clipped just enough to make it sting. "Big day yesterday. People loved the cobbler." I stared at her for a second, unsure how to answer. My mouth was dry. My temples pulsed. My hands instinctively moved to cradle the underside of my belly. "I woke up dizzy again," I said quietly. "I felt short of breath coming down the stairs." She didn't pause in folding. "It's called being pregnant, Simri. You wanted this baby, didn't you?" The way she said it wasn't a question. It was a sentence, a reprimand wrapped in a ribbon. "I'm not asking for a pity parade," I replied, voice low. "I'm saying something doesn't feel right." She chuckled softly, almost like she felt sorry for me. "Pregnancy isn't an excuse for laziness. You're not sick, you're just soft." There it was. That line, delivered with the same tone she'd used when I was 12 and came down with strep throat the week of the state soccer finals. I could still hear her voice. "A sore throat doesn't cancel commitment. You made a promise to the team." I played. I threw up behind the bleachers. She clapped anyway. Now she folded another napkin with the same detachment, as if I was a passing breeze, not her daughter wobbling on swollen feet in front of her. I gripped the counter, not because I was weak, but because I was furious, and if I didn't anchor myself to something, I might scream. "They'll never protect me." That thought came sharp and sudden, and just like that, something shifted. Not the usual aching sadness, not guilt. This was cleaner, colder, a realization. I was no longer her daughter in this moment. I was a mother, and I would protect mine. "Mom," I said. voice firmer than I expected. I could have lost the baby yesterday. She finally looked up. Just briefly. Her eyes scanned me like she was calculating a grocery list. Oh, stop. You were sitting on the floor like a tired toddler. Don't dramatize. That was it. No apology, no ounce of concern. Just another line in the Vera May handbook of dismissive parenting. I didn't answer. Instead, I walked slowly toward the side table where I'd left my purse. The ache in my hip barked again. I reached in, pulled out the manila envelope I always carried since the doctor labeled me high risk 2 weeks ago. I'd meant to leave it at home, but I hadn't. I placed it gently on the kitchen table, opened it, pulled out the top document, highlighted in orange, right below my name and gestational age. Risk level, high. Immediate intervention recommended in cases of sudden dizziness, bleeding, or swelling. She didn't blink. This says high risk, I told her, tapping the word. This isn't drama, this isn't being soft, this is medical fact. Silence. If you ignore that again, I said slowly, if I collapse and you roll your eyes instead of calling for help, I'm gone. Forever. No baby visits, no birthdays, no do-overs. She went back to folding napkins. I waited. She didn't speak, didn't nod, didn't flinch, and I realized I wasn't asking for understanding anymore. I was issuing terms. She didn't look up from her napkins, but that was okay. I was done waiting for her to look. By the time I eased myself onto the couch that afternoon, the walls of the house felt closer than they ever had. There was no music this time. No guests. Just the faint ticking of the kitchen clock and the occasional creak of the ceiling fan above me. I had made a cup of ginger tea, lukewarm now, and sat with both hands wrapped around it, trying to ignore the tightening low in my abdomen. It wasn't like before. This time, it felt deeper, sharper. My skin along the base of my belly pulled taut, and a dull ache started to press into my lower back. I shifted positions. Then again. It didn't help. I didn't call for anyone. I had learned. The hallway was quiet. I could hear the faint clatter of dishes being moved upstairs, probably Avon rummaging through the guest bathroom looking for hair gel he left behind a year ago. Isolde was gone. She had disappeared earlier in a rush, citing a Zoom meeting she conveniently remembered right after brunch. I let the tea rest on the coffee table and leaned forward, breathing slowly. Another cramp rolled through me, tighter this time, and I flinched. I stood to walk toward the pantry, thinking maybe something salty would calm the nausea. My fingers grazed the shelves, scanning for crackers. Then the room swayed. The edge of the pantry blurred, then tilted, and I grabbed for the doorframe. I didn't make it. My knees buckled, my shoulder caught the side of the cabinet, and I collapsed onto the tile. This time, I felt it. Warmth. Not just sweat. Between my thighs. Under my back. Blood. It wasn't much, but it was enough. My breath shortened. A dry panic crawled up my throat, and I gasped. The hallway remained still. I rolled to my side, hand reaching, slow, heavy, for my phone. My heart pounded in my ears. The world narrowed into flashes of breath and fear. "Mom!" I called, my voice barely audible. "Please, the baby!" Footsteps approached. I closed my eyes in relief. Vera May stood above me, arms crossed, her face shadowed by the hallway light. "You're doing this again?" she said, voice low but sharp. "In front of the kids?" My hand trembled toward my phone. I managed to tap the screen, digits barely pressing as I dialed. Before it could ring, her hand reached down and snatched it away. "We are not making a scene," she hissed. "Pull it together." My fingers curled into my palm. The blood beneath me was no longer warm, it was chilling. My lips parted, and for the first time in a long time, I didn't whisper. "If I lose this baby," I said, voice steady, "and you stop me from getting help, I will never forgive you." She blinked. I pushed my elbows under me, forcing myself upright. "I will make sure you're held responsible," I added, not just in my memory, but in court. The words didn't tremble. They landed hard, deliberate. She stared at me, unmoving. Then something flickered, just for a second, a crack in the glass. Fear. I saw it. It vanished quickly, replaced by the cool composure she wore like lipstick. She placed the phone back in my lap, didn't say a word, turned and walked away. But by then, it didn't matter. Because while I was crawling toward the pantry, my phone had already been set to record, not video, audio. It captured her tone, her words, my plea. And when I called Darian after she left the room, he picked up on the second ring. "Hey," he said, breath catching. "You okay?" I didn't answer right away. Instead, I lifted the phone to my mouth, and with what strength I had left, I spoke for the both of us. "I need help. Now." I kept the phone tilted just right, angled so Darian could see my face, the red-stained floor beneath me, and the sharp, polished shoes Vera May refused to move. I didn't need theatrics. I just needed truth. "Hey, love," I said, voice steady but low. "I need you to hit record. I'm bleeding." He didn't ask questions, didn't waste time on panic. "I'm on it," he said, voice tightening. I could hear his car keys rattle, a door slam, the soft rumble of his engine turning over. "Keep it on," he added, already moving. I nodded, knowing he could see me. My other hand pressed gently to the underside of my belly, where the ache pulsed with every shallow breath. I moved the phone slightly to catch the hallway where Isolde had just entered. She took one look at me, sitting in a puddle of my own fear, and snorted. "God, again?" she muttered, rolling her eyes. "She's being dramatic, just like last Christmas when she couldn't stand during dinner. You love being the center of attention, huh?" I turned the camera back to my face. I didn't flinch. "I asked for help," I said clearly. "I was refused. They stepped over me." I didn't yell. I wanted the words to land sharp, not shaky. Vera May stood in the background now, arms crossed over her pristine blouse, jaw set so tight I thought her molars might crack. From the phone, Darian's voice returned. "Quick thing. Did you authorize that $500 charge to the joint account? Costco, from 2 days ago?" My breath caught. I hadn't. But I didn't need to ask who had. Vera May's eyes narrowed, just a hair. She turned, walked to the counter, and began arranging napkins like we were in the middle of a bridal shower, not a breakdown. The nerve of her, unfazed, unapologetic. "She used our card again," I told Darian. Didn't even ask. I could hear him scribbling something down. Then, for the first time since I collapsed, I pulled myself upright. I sat straighter, shifted my weight, leaned forward, and made sure my voice didn't waver. "Let me make something real clear," I said, addressing the room, not the phone. "You think I'm weak. You think silence is the same as submission. But I've been documenting everything for 5 years. Every ignored call, every overdraft, every time you blamed me for something Isolde said, or Avon forgot, or you didn't want to face yourself." I reached into my purse and pulled out the folder I'd prepared months ago. Call logs, emails, screenshots, photos of scratches on my car, texts from Isolde that read, "You owe me for ruining Vegas." "Drama?" I held up the folder. "This is not drama. This is evidence." Vera May's mouth opened slightly, closed again. "You wouldn't destroy this family over a tantrum," she said, voice soft but soaked in disdain. "You already did," I answered. "I'm just not cleaning up the pieces this time." I looked into the phone camera again. Let the record show, I asked for help, and they chose cake. For a moment, no one spoke. Then Isolde scoffed. "Are you really trying to turn this into some kind of exposé?" Vera May moved to the sink, started rinsing a clean plate like her hands needed a distraction. Avon didn't come downstairs. Coward. I sat back, still holding the phone. Darian was on speaker now. "I'm 10 minutes out," he said. "You need me to call an ambulance?" I paused. "No," I said. "Not yet." Because this wasn't just about getting help anymore. This was about being heard, documented, undeniable, replayed if necessary. I let the phone stay on the counter, camera still rolling. I wasn't hiding anything anymore. Vera May glanced over at it, then at me. You'll regret airing our dirty laundry, Simri. I shook my head. I regret letting you think it was yours to stain in the first place. Because I was no longer the youngest daughter, they'd just made me a mother with nothing to lose. The first text came in at 6:32 a.m. It was from Melanie's daughter, Kelsey, the same teenager who always filmed everything, even at funerals. I'd forgotten she was at the house that night. She wasn't even supposed to be there. But I remembered her standing near the hallway with her phone half lowered, filming something absent-mindedly while Vera May refilled the punch bowl and gossiped without a care. Attached was a video, 31 seconds. In it, my mother leaned against the kitchen island, her voice clear as crystal. She's always been a drama queen. Queen D, we call her. If she's not fainting, she's crying. If she's not crying, she's stirring something up to make herself relevant. That girl's never learned to just be quiet and helpful. Then laughter, Isolde's, unmistakable. And a third voice chiming in. She's just too much. I didn't finish watching. I didn't need to. By 7 o'clock a.m., it had already been uploaded to Facebook. Kelsey captioned it. This is how some families treat the one they should protect. I never asked her to post it. I never expected she would. But part of me was relieved someone else had finally seen it, had heard it without me having to explain. By 9 a.m., the video had over 12,000 views. By noon, it was being shared across groups, church communities, women's support pages, even local mom forums. And the comments. This broke me. She deserves better. You can see the coldness in her tone, like she's proud of it. This is emotional neglect, plain and simple. I didn't say anything. I didn't repost it. I didn't like a single comment. I let the world speak. Isolde messaged me around lunch. No greeting, no punctuation. Just, take this down. You're embarrassing, Mom. I didn't respond. Instead, I closed the message and packed a small bag with my medical files, a spare shirt, and the crumpled blouse I'd worn the day of the fall. Still stained, still evidence. By 2:15 p.m., Darian had pulled the car up to the curb, and we drove to the police station. I didn't cry when I gave my statement. I told the officer everything, how I was 8 months pregnant, had collapsed twice, asked for help, and was denied it both times. I showed her my bruised side, the photos Darian had taken, the thread of messages between me and Vera May that proved her callousness wasn't a one-off. The officer listened, wrote everything down. She didn't roll her eyes or dismiss me. And when she asked if I'd felt endangered in my mother's home, I answered without hesitation. Yes, repeatedly. That evening, after the statement had been filed and we were back home, my phone buzzed again. Voicemail, Vera May. Her voice, usually smooth like honey-coated steel, now held a forced sweetness. We can work this out, Simri. There's no need to drag everyone through the mud. This is family stuff. It stays in the family. You know that? She paused. I know you're upset, but think about what you're doing. You'll break us. I didn't listen to the rest. I saved it, forwarded it to my attorney, because her voice no longer made me second-guess myself. It wasn't a mother's worry. It was damage control. The next morning, my cousin Tanya shared the video publicly and added a caption. I've kept quiet for too long. Simri isn't lying. I saw it growing up too. Then everything cracked. Half the family messaged me in private, some supportive, some venomous. Aunt June sent a paragraph about how I was humiliating a woman who only ever tried her best. Uncle Ray blocked me. 3 of my cousins unfriended me within hours, but I didn't flinch, because for every message soaked in guilt, there were strangers writing, "Thank you for speaking up." For the first time, I realized I wasn't standing alone in the middle of a storm. I was standing at the edge of one that had always been there. I was just finally naming it. The house I grew up in didn't feel like home anymore. It felt like a museum of everything I was expected to be: quiet, helpful, agreeable, invisible. And I was done touring. That night, as I lay in bed, hand over my belly, I whispered aloud, not for Darian, not for the world, but for me. My daughter will never feel this kind of betrayal, ever. I didn't care what names they called me now. Drama queen? Fine. At least this queen wasn't silent. If they thought Queen D was dramatic, they should have seen what came next. The first 3 days after the video felt quiet, but not the kind of quiet that brought peace. It was the kind that buzzed beneath the skin, like a radio frequency just out of reach. My phone barely stopped buzzing, though I ignored it most of the time. Darian, on the other hand, didn't leave my side. He set up a tray beside the couch with everything I could possibly need: water, saltine crackers, vitamins, tissues I hadn't used, and a little lavender sachet from our baby shower that I'd rolled into a fist more than once. The bruises on my ribs faded slower than expected, but Luna, our nickname for the baby, kept kicking like nothing was wrong, as if she was reminding me, I'm still here. Darian suggested we wait before deciding whether to pursue charges. You don't have to do anything yet, he said, but if you want to, I'm with you. He meant it. I saw it in the way he looked at me without pity, just readiness. But I didn't want a courtroom moment, not yet. What I wanted was my voice back. So I opened a blank document on my laptop and stared at it for 3 hours before writing a single word. The title came first: An Open Letter to the People Who Called Me Queen D. It wasn't an attack piece. It wasn't a scream in print. It was what I needed to say, not to get revenge, but to reclaim something. I started with the kitchen, with the fall, with the blood on the tile. I told them about how no one came to help, how they walked around me, joked about me, dismissed me. Not one person said my name. Then I rewound to childhood, to the broken vase that wasn't mine, to the punishment that was, to every time I was told to be quiet, to be understanding, to let it go. I wrote about how love in our family came with conditions, and how those conditions never seemed to apply to Isolde or Avon. I explained how silence became survival, how every word I didn't say turned into another stitch in the mask I wore just to keep the peace. Then I wrote the truth that burned in my gut for years. I didn't destroy this family. You destroyed it when you taught me that love had to be earned through pain. I read it back once, then again, and when I felt ready, I hit publish. I posted it to my personal page. No tags, no hashtags, no photos, just the letter. Within an hour, it had been shared over 400 times. By evening, it was on a blog for mothers who had endured generational emotional abuse. By midnight, I had emails from 3 podcast producers and a message from a local therapist who said she wanted to read it in a workshop. Vera May never responded publicly, but I got a notification she left every single church group we were in together. Even the quilting circle she once bragged about leading for 6 years straight. Isolde didn't call. She sent a text 2 days later. You've made your point. Happy now? I stared at the message for a full minute. Then I powered off the phone and dropped it in the kitchen drawer. Because the answer didn't matter. She wasn't the audience anymore. That night, while Darian folded laundry across from me on the couch, I pulled out my notebook, the one I bought at a CVS the week I found out I was pregnant. I hadn't written much in it yet. Just a few scribbled dreams, a grocery list I never finished, and names, baby names. I hadn't looked at that page in weeks. Maybe because nothing felt right. Maybe because I wasn't ready to name someone new when I hadn't even reclaimed my own. But as I flipped through the pages, one name stopped me. Luna Merelda. Luna for the moon. What's soft but still pulls the tides. What's constant, even when hidden. Merelda for my grandmother. The only woman who ever taught me you can be gentle and still hold your ground. I whispered it aloud, once, then again. Darian looked up. That the one? I nodded. Yeah, that's her. I slipped the ultrasound photo we'd taped to the fridge into a new frame I'd picked up earlier that week, a soft gray one with tiny silver stars. This time, I wrote the name beneath it in ink. No one erased it. No one covered it up. And no one else got to claim it. This time, I got to write the story. And this time, no one erased my name. The air that morning was still. Not silent exactly, but hushed. Like the world was holding its breath just long enough for something sacred to settle in. The only sound inside the house came from Luna. Little coos and soft hiccups from her bassinet drifted down the hallway as I moved quietly across the hardwood floor, socked feet barely making a sound. 2 months. It had been 2 months since everything exploded. Since the letter, the video, the voicemail. Since I stopped needing anyone's permission to be angry. Now, every morning started with her. Luna's breath against my neck as I held her, her tiny fingers curling instinctively around mine. The weight of her head tucked under my chin like a promise I never knew I was allowed to make. This morning felt different, though. Lighter. Not because the past was gone, but because it no longer controlled the entire conversation. As I poured a glass of water in the kitchen, my eyes landed on the framed photo near the coffee maker, the same one from the ultrasound, now joined by a new image. Luna sleeping, her fist half curled under her chin. Above it, I'd written her name in soft gold ink, Luna Merelda. There was something powerful about choosing her name myself, not letting anyone suggest it, not asking for approval, just claiming it. Luna for the light that guided me through the darkest nights, Merelda for my grandmother, the only woman in my family who never asked me to dim for the sake of keeping peace. I carried my water back into the nursery and stood quietly beside the crib, watching her shift in her sleep. That little furrow in her brow, even at rest, made her look fierce, determined. I brushed my fingertips along the edge of her blanket and let my thoughts drift to the house I grew up in. The smell of old wood polish and lemon pie, the sound of laughter layered with control. The memory of being told, again and again, "We don't talk about family outside this house." As if truth was a betrayal. I remember the mousse, the tile floor, the heat of embarrassment as people walked around me like spilled milk. And I remember thinking, in that moment, that the damage was permanent. But it wasn't. It left scars, sure, bruises in places no one could see. But now, when I thought of that house, I didn't flinch. I didn't shrink. I saw it as it was, a place where I learned what not to pass down. The doorbell rang just before 10 a.m. Darian was at work and Luna had just gone back to sleep. I glanced through the peephole and paused. On the porch sat a small arrangement of white lilies and a card. No knock, no text, just left there, deliberately. I opened the door slowly and picked it up. The envelope was cream-colored, handwriting unmistakably hers. Vera May's, perfect cursive. No smudges, as if to say, I still control the narrative. I didn't open it. I set it on the mantel. Not out of anger, but because I didn't need the words inside to know what they meant. We'd like to meet our granddaughter. Maybe they did, but it wasn't time. I returned to Luna's room and lifted her from the crib, holding her against my shoulder. She stirred but didn't cry, just nestled in. "You'll never have to shrink to be loved," I whispered. "Not in this house." My voice shook, not from fear, but from the release of a lifetime of restraint. There had always been a quiet weight on my chest. A pressure to be agreeable, to avoid conflict, to protect the comfort of others at the cost of my own. Now it was gone. Darian came home just after noon. He stepped into the nursery, leaned down, and kissed my forehead without a word. "No rush," he said gently. "Whenever you're ready." I nodded, and we sat there together, watching our daughter sleep. Not planning the next step, not defending the last one. Just being still. Later that evening, I opened a small drawer and pulled out the photograph of my grandmother. The one where she stood in her garden, apron dusted with flour, hands on her hips, like she was challenging the wind to try her. I placed it on the shelf above Luna's crib. Beside it, I added a small wooden plaque with her middle name etched in silver. Merelda, a name that survived, a name that carried something better forward. I didn't become the villain. I became the beginning of something better. Sometimes, the hardest part of healing is realizing the people who hurt you the most still think they did nothing wrong. But healing doesn't need their apology. It starts the moment you stop waiting for one. What would you have done in Simri's shoes? Have you ever been called dramatic for simply asking to be seen? Share your story in the comments below. And don't forget to subscribe for more true family stories that speak the truth so many are still too afraid to tell.